Welcome to the amazing interview with Dr. Professor Richard Funk. He is a physician, an anatomist with an impressive international career. He studied medicine in Erlangen, Germany, received his doctorate there, and qualified as a professor in anatomy before taking over the chair of anatomy at the medical faculty in Dresden in 1994. In addition to his research, he held leading academic positions for many years as a dean of research, as a member of important scientific committees, and later as president of Dresden's International University. Among other things, he investigates how light and electromagnetic fields influence living cells and how anatomical structures interact with the functional process of the nervous system. His scientific focus lies at the interface between cell biology, neuroanatomy, and biophysics. With around 140 international specialist publications and his new book, Computer and AI versus Human Brain, Dr. Richard Funk brings an extraordinary scientific depth to this conversation, combined with the ability to reflect clearly and openly on fundamental questions about consciousness and perception. I am so excited to welcome you again, Dr. Professor Richard Funk of the University of Dresden from Germany. Thank you for your honor. We met in very auspicious circumstances. Both of us were traveling through Raja Ampat on the top of the mountain hill that is so renowned with that view of that turquoise heart. You, with a group of fine vibrating beings, were so radiant. I stood there and I said, they're angels. I'm going to talk with them. And in 2 minutes, we discovered that you are speaking and writing about consciousness, AI, and the brain. And this is the very cutting edge of information we need. So, Professor Richard Funk, can I welcome you? And thank you for coming. And you are the author of the book, Computer, AI, and Consciousness. And
yes.
I would love if you could even show it so we can get started so that people can read it, the title,
yes.
and
yes.
a little bit. Yep. Computer and AI versus the human brain.
Yes.
Please enlighten us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I love to see you again. And it was a really astonishing meeting with all those people on the hill of it was Palau Islet near New Guinea, Papua. Yes, and so I begin with my early years. I, even in school, was interested in the brain, and I looked for books with showing function of the brain, morphology of the brain, and so on. And over the years, I realized the real heart problem. This is a special expression, heart problem,
between consciousness,
yes, the mind and brain. And how comes it together? So many people think, the mind is only some expression of the morphology, which functions with electric impulses, which we can also sense in the electroencephalogram. But this is not all. If you think on the anatomy of the brain and the action potentials which go to and fro in the brain, they have a velocity of about a bicycle or a slow car and so on. And so this is not very fast. And if you think all of such connections which you have in your brain, this cannot really show our fast as lightning appearance sometimes and conscious, let's say, grasping of the whole environment, which we sometimes have. In a tenth of a second, we feel
Get
that,
flashes. Yes.
yes, we get a flash and we say, okay, there is something wrong in the community, which I now come in, or very nice feeling,
We've
and so on. And this cannot be only by these classical ways of conduction in the brain.
I remember
And
you writing also and saying if that massive amount, I mean, still the brain is faster and more capable than what even the speed of modern AI can do. And you
yeah,
said if the brain were functioning at, or if the computers were functioning at the speed that the brain is,
Hmm.
even though you liken it to a bicycle, you would say it would cook, it would
Yes.
combust. In other words, you're saying the brain is capable of low temperature quantum computation in a way,
Yes, yes, it's true. This is a proof that it cannot function classically. And the physicist Gönitz, which was a pupil of Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, a very renowned, also Nobel Prize winner, and those people say the brain only needs 20 watts. 20 watts. This is not very much of chemical energy. And if you compare a supercomputer
Mm.
and even the new quantum computers, they need megawatts and more. And you know what the servers need and energy and so on.
So
And
so you're saying there is no possibility that the actual computation is even happening in the brain. You're saying there must be a quantum space in which the computation is happening, transducing into the
that's
brain
it.
machine,
Yes.
right? Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. You are right. The brain is only, I would say, a mirror or some, let's say, reduction
Right.
machine, which, which grasps or sees all this information and transducts it down to these only few bytes which we have in our real conscious daily mind. There are only a few bytes. But on the other hand, we have, let's say, other ways going around this normal way. We have other additional weights which are much faster and go into our subconscious, let's say, uh, feeling or grasping of all this information. And
Beyond
this,
AI, what we would call Galia, sentience, perception, aliveness.
yes,
Our ganglia are a sort of primitive brain. Our solar plexus is like fear,
yes,
fight or flight, right? It thinks
yes,
in a very different way. Yeah, for
yes,
sure.
and yes, and all cells are what's it's an expression from a German Babushka. He said it's a sentient cell. That means all cells in our body can feel something. They have a kind of minimal kind of consciousness.
Consciousness,
Yes,
which
a
you
minim,
call that the MUC, the
minim,
minimal
yes,
unit
the
of
minimal
consciousness.
units. Yes, minimal units of consciousness. And
Does the
those cells,
minimal unit of consciousness, which you say
mm,
started uh, billions, I mean, of years ago. I mean, this is before
yes,
oxygen started coming to the planet, right? If I
yes,
understand your text correctly. So
yes, it's
it's so now tell me, there is something that is almost creating a, a unit that can transpose
yeah,
information into something and eventually becomes a greater and greater transducer, namely
yes,
brain or
our
functioning thing.
brain, yes.
So what Okay, so I listened to the late astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who
Mm,
started the program of the noetic sciences in America which studies the
Mm.
question of consciousness as well. And I know you're versed in his work or in Dr. Radin's work.
I know.
And I love how they're trying. And, I listen to him. Mind you, I'm just a female philosopher. But when I teach and speak, I speak about gravitational capacity of spin factor of our consciousness. Now, how can we come together and describe? I mean, he said it on the stage. He was paid by the think tank of America with the most
Mm.
brilliant minds. And you know
Mm.
what they decided gravity was, or what thought is gravitational, creates gravitational fields. So if
Yes.
in that, I mean, this goes along with what you're saying, it creates or thought or the entity creates coherence, which then transduces into electrical impulses in the brain.
Mm.
Tell me a little bit more about that, how you see
Yes,
that.
yes, yes. We can begin with these minimal units of consciousness, which
Yes.
are beginning also in the so-called protists, the archaea. This is a pre-form of bacteria, and these are still now found at the deepest ocean, where the continental plates go away from in other, and there is the so-called volcanic plume, which goes up, and there is a special atmosphere down in the water with this is sulfur hydride and other things which are normally not seen in the connection
Life
with
forms. Right,
living and
right.
other things, but they are really sentient and orient at the rim of the crater, and they where the maximum concentration of that what they need is located. So this is really a sign that they can move willingly,
Voluntarily.
I would
Right.
say,
Yes.
to this, and they are so primitive, and every eukaryotic, that is a modern cell with a nucleus, is much more complicated, and also unicellular organism like a amoeba uh, is much more, let's say, conscious, has many such minimal units of consciousness compared to these protists.
So
So
we're seeing an
we
augmentation of
see,
complexity.
yes, we see, and this is in nature against the law of entropy. Normally in thermodynamics,
Yes.
entropy would work like this, that every energy levels would cancel out over time, and then nothing can happen, and they are dispersed randomly, the molecules, and so on. But
Okay. That
the contrary
is
is,
happening.
yes.
I
And
love it. Now, the same thing happens. I mean, let's just put some theosophist, Leadbeater,
mm,
maybe that you're versant with, or even the concept of out of body near death experience from the neuroscientist. We have two, even Alexander, we have Levitt, we have people who in neuroscience have studied the brain and they're saying the entity that is actually conscious is outside of the brain and can live
mm,
outside. What can live and where? Why? What
yeah,
coagulates it?
where,
And does it change? Does it? Is it possible? I mean, that
mm,
these entities, these MUCs, and that more and more complex forms somehow over plant life, animal life, and then
mm,
onward, it has the ability, because we also know that humans have greater abilities than others, learn how to create a focus point or a electromagravitational
yes,
capacity. Tell me.
yes, it's from the base of the matter. You have an upgrading spiral, upgrading feedback loop with information. The information must come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you think our universe would be a closed shop where nothing can come in, then you would have these thermodynamic things. But somewhere must this from somewhere this information must come, and this information comes slowly, billion of years, into the matter and then into the consciousness in these minimal elements, and they gather more and more. And at a point, you have not only conscious elements, but a kind of intelligence that the organisms can think what was deleterious for me or other things, or where can I find food and so on. And this is still, it's in an amoeba, it's unicellular, but this thing has such a consciousness. And also in the next billions of years, then we have the let's say the crown in the human
Right.
cortex, the human brain with this
Mm-hmm.
cortex. And this is a real good mirror. And
Mm-hmm.
some neuro anatomists say it's a kind, in some areas in the forebrain and temporal parts and so on, we have here a kind of tabula rasa, something which is a matrix where many things can be inscripted. That's it. However, if you think now everything together, let's say the evolution of matter and consciousness, then this is also going up over a long period and together harmoniously. Like that's the main difference between brain and computers. And if you think an embryology, you have 9 months to create a human being in the maternal womb, and it's from a fertilized egg. It's only one cell,
Right.
and this cell divides, and so on. But the cell get acquainted to each other. They are harmoniously developing, and they know each other. And at the end, all cells, nearly all cells, I would say, in the body are connected somehow and have also a kind of consciousness. And there are real, let's say, hard science studies, um, like such from Michael Levin, who is in the Boston area, and he shows that the cells are connected and they, let's say, yeah, exchange information.
Yep.
All
Absolutely. I mean,
and also kidney cells and
y-
such cells, not only the nerve cells. So
I mean, they
the whole,
actually, I mean, the military did experiments. At the time, the person who wrote the book, The Secret Life of the Plant, Secret Life of the Cells,
Mhm.
they took saliva cells from a person, put them on a petri dish, put the person kilometers away in front of a video and encephalograph, and showed him pornographic
Mhm.
pictures, and they measured the electrical output from the saliva. And the
Yeah,
saliva acted at a distance accordingly to what the guy was
yes,
seeing. So, yes, we even have long distance connection between cells that once,
connections.
yeah,
Yes,
yes,
and these are these quantum connections which are really out of our time and out of our space, I would say. It's in another, yeah,
dimension.
space.
Yep.
It's another dimension.
Which
You
we
can,
have not tackled yet. And that is the
yeah.
problem. So, I mean, they speak about quantum computing. They speak about potentially, and some have used the looking glass, the prophetic
Hmm.
tendency of AI to predict recurring patterns or
Yeah.
potential patterns in the future. But potential patterns fast forwarded into the future are likelihoods, mathematical potentials. But
Yes.
when we speak about prophetic, I have had prophetic dreams that said, don't travel to Hawaii. There is going to be a black round thing. And I
Hmm.
was going to fly and I didn't buy the ticket. the week that I would have been there, they had a huge, supermassive tornado, hurricane come and
Yes.
flatten everything where I was going to stay. But guess what?
Yeah. Yeah.
The tornado did not flatten the house where I had lived in the week before because I'd gotten a free ticket. I left
Huh.
and we were going to fly back to swim somewhere with dolphins. The house where we stayed, I mean, the people wrote me and they said, look, not a window has been cracked. The light, I mean, I don't think this universe is really
Huh.
actually solid, but consciousness
Yeah.
is interacting. So where does consciousness reside? I don't know if that's part of your forte. You're pointing for sure in a direction that
Um,
consciousness is not
yes.
residing in the brain. Let's say that.
Not,
But
yes, I would say
anything else?
yes. Yeah, I would say let's say some parts of what we say, uh, some parts are there in the brain, but other parts are outside. It's really, I would say, a enlarged space of our consciousness. And this is also an expression of some scientists which now deal with this, psychologists and so on. It's really a, yeah.
I remember the research by a neuroscientist, I think it's Libet is his name. He,
Mhm.
they put encephalographs on the brain,
Yeah.
electrodes, and they could see that the brain would have a reaction before it had the, let's say, words and so on. So they could see the brain had the desire to eat the chocolate in front of it. The brain could send, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Mhm.
What they could not see, and they could not see any electrical activity when a person said, no, I won't eat that chocolate.
Yeah.
The won't factor, they called it, is
Yeah.
deliberate will. Now,
Yes.
that did not reside or originate in the brain. That didn't even register at first. It was difficult to register at all in the brain.
Hmm.
That came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
The won't
This.
factor.
Yes, it's really true. And I know these experiments by Benjamin Libet. And he
Thank you for
said,
knowing the
okay,
name.
yeah, our brain is about half a second behind our consciousness. So it's behind.
That
And
is impressive. I
some,
mean, that is amazing. That is like
yeah,
off the charts.
yes, and some now interpreted it like if if we predate, then at least then we have no free will. But this is all rubbish. That it's not the case. We have a free will. We have this one
It.
factor. Yes,
I love
that's it.
that. And
Yeah,
that is
and
not residing in the biology of the brain, nor is it in the machine. I mean, that free will resides
yes,
outside.
or in this quantum space, which is the first, let's say, the first link to
Yep.
our brain, and then it goes down in the electric. We have now also a, let's say, fast electric, direct electric connection in the upper layer, layer one of the cortex, between the apical dendrites of the pyramidal and other cells. And though it's really a fast, let's say, adjusting of thresholds. And we have also direct electric connections. These are the so-called gap junctions. These
Hmm.
are electric direct connections. And then it goes down in the more electrochemical way,
Chemical,
which is there. Yes, and this
neurotransmitters.
is
Yep.
action potential.
Yep.
Then it goes down into the brainstem and into other areas of the body. And at least we have a
Like it steps
pruning of
down. Like
steps
we have a
down.
stepping down from something that is over long periods of Earth time, coherently creating a
Yes,
substratum to receive itself.
yes, and this is the coherence I have also explained in the, let's say, development of a human body over the 9 months. All cells are working coherently together. And also the brain cells then are, let's say, coherent to each other. And this is the difference to a computer. You take different things willingly by the human, let's say,
Yeah.
small mental capacity in our times now, and think, okay, we take this chip and this chip and melt this together. But these things which are then put together are not harmoniously coming into the being. So they
Right.
are, and that's it. They are not created
It's just a
synchronous.
machine. It's like
Yes.
imagining the functioning of a clockwork to have a mind of its own, even though it's amazing at keeping time.
Yes, it's amazing how the artificial intelligence is working now. It's really amazing, and
Yes.
would also now yeah, it had this Turing examine would pass it because Turing has said
Turing
if you
test. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Turing test if you have a computer
Yeah,
and you
at least on video. I
you
mean, as
you
a robot,
think
I don't
it's a
think we would.
human being,
Yep,
yeah, and you can dis don't you cannot discern it. Then it's
yeah,
this
yeah.
then it has it passed this Turing test. Yes.
Right. So, but
Okay,
I have a
but
question. Yeah. So,
yeah.
do you, I mean, let me ask you my question, but then you go with your train of thought. I want to
Mm,
ask the question. People say, oh, yeah, but in the future,
mm,
the intelligence will descend into robots. It'll inhabit the robots. The
mm, mm,
transhumanists would really love to think that.
mm,
They
mm,
want to make us believe that we can transmit the memory that
mm,
we are from our brain and habits into a chip and then have it repeat itself looking like me. You couldn't
mm,
tell the difference, but I'm basically just a machine. However, do you think there is any chance of this supernatural entity called soul, or however you want to call it,
mm,
being able
mm,
to transmit reliably,
mm,
inhabit the
mm.
computer? Inhabit the computer. Do you think that is even a possibility? I hope not.
No, I don't, and I don't think so, because that's really the problem of this evolution of matter, and this evolution is driven by a overwhelming consciousness, like Max Planck said,
Yeah.
that in the last years of his life, he said that there must be some conscious entity behind matter and also information. He said this 1944 and he died 1947 years.
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
so
So
he was anticipating his own transcendence probably and sensing there is something that is beyond matter. I mean,
yeah.
there are so many experiments. How would one be able to explain the memory of one girl saying, "No, in my past life, you were not my parents. These were my parents." Mahatma Gandhi supported that. There was one book written about it. I read it. I'm sorry, I don't memorize these
Mhm.
things sometimes. But the girl was then able to say, in that next town, that was my house. I slept there. The money that I was hiding was there. Let's look. They look behind it, and had to find out. The
Yeah,
story goes on that the memory exists and transcends out of body. How is that possible?
yeah. We have, and I would go now to more, let's say, an esoteric line, but you should say that there is not only the Planck and the quantum layer,
Okay,
but also some, I would say, etheric layers behind, and then
beyond.
all what is said in the
Beautiful.
let's say ancient from the ancient Indians on, which said, okay, we have some koshas, which are in addition to our
Yep.
physical body. We have a etheric body, astral body,
Yes.
mental, causal, and so on. And these spheres were first grasped by a German chemist, Klaus Volkhammer. He made experiments with, let's say, he said subtle matter in English. In German, this ist mehr ätherische Ebene, and this subtle matter can be shown with his waking experiments. He had very good measurement instruments, and he could show by microgram and nanogram what's happening in sealed containers with vacuum. And in these sealed containers, he placed some not non-living matter, but also plants and so on. And he saw some, let's say, chunks of the weight, some microgram up and microgram down and so on. And at least he said there must be something which is more to going to entropy, which make all a little bit heavier.
Mm.
And this he compared with the dark matter which we have in the cosmos.
Interesting.
And we have here
Yes.
35% of dark matter,
Yeah.
and the other is net entropic against entropy, the lifting up.
Symptopic, I call it, yeah.
Yeah, net entropic. And this is in
Yes.
analogy to dark energy, which is about 70% in our universe.
Is that maybe what you would call syntropic energy? I would call it the consciousness or the gravitational capacity of consciousness making itself felt or causing
Yes,
an accumulation?
yeah. And if you go to these basic forces, which you, let's say, speak with gravitation and so on, gravitation cannot be grasped absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a real problem. They can unify the electromagnetic force, the weak and the strong interaction. These are these basic forces, but they cannot put the gravitational forces into these three
Categories.
components. And
So
that's a real problem.
I think that's the biggest, beautiful described problem. Can AI create negentropy? Can
Yeah,
create, I mean, that was really, that would be, that's the,
yeah,
it cannot, we know that. But tell me a little bit, put that in a nutshell or flesh that out.
yeah,
That,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay, and the physicists have theories that there are these other dimensions, and they are calculating with 10, 11, 12, and more dimension. They are enrolled, very tiny. We can't grasp this other dimension, but gravitation is something, yeah, I would say, looking out into this dimension. That's the problem. And this is the link between these higher dimensions and in a kind, this gravitational forces. And yeah, and others say, okay, we have these string theory, which is
string theory, yeah.
down, yes, as smallest element, even down in the quarks, we have strings, and also in the electron, we have these strings, and they are also called calculating with 10, 11, or brains coming from membrane. These
No,
brains have 12 dimensions. So you see, well,
differentiation between the
yes,
layers as such.
we have only three here in our physical world and one time. But in this dimension, time isn't like in the quantum scale. Time is not a problem to go back and forth and so on. There are experiments which show this.
And even consciousness can do that. And in psychotherapy, I
Yeah.
mean, I've, had people go into the past, readjust their beliefs,
Hmm.
creating a different gravitational interaction in the past with that reality that happened back then.
Yeah.
And they come into the here now. The father calls for the first time in 35 years and says, I love you. That happened
Hmm.
to two men. I just had another client yesterday, and he said he literally did something in the past and came into the now, and two people in his life changed their behavior because he changed the
Yeah.
past. So
Yeah.
we can see the connection. It's not like we can see it with 3D, but we can see the effects in
Hmm.
3D. Mm,
Yeah.
that
But
is so
sometimes,
phenomenal.
yes, and sometimes in our dreams we do such things, and yes, we can travel back into the past and talk with people which are dead now, but in the dreams they are still living, and so on. And so we must be open. We must be really open, and also our universe. uh, Maybe we have a multiverse world with many, many universes,
Possible.
and maybe our universe has also behind a evolution such that over many, many universes which were tried out by a higher entity, tried out, our basic forces are so perfectly harmonized and balanced that we have a real steady universe.
And
So, yeah.
so if the universe is experimenting to have a condensed lens through which the intelligence can express
Hmm,
itself and maybe look back at itself.
hmm.
How would you say? I mean, there are people who are saying we're living in a form of a simulation, and you could argue that the simulation itself is trying to figure out what's going on. The Mandel, like the Mandelbrot said, it just is creating more and more and more and more of these complex structures, but it still wouldn't account for self-awareness or continuous memory, would it? I mean, the argument would be easily defeatable with the counter argument, even though it's the hard question, like you said in the beginning, that consciousness seems to be capable of affecting time space. At least some extraordinary people can with their consciousness. I mean, so are we living in a simulation?
Maybe, maybe, but we have so many possibilities, and maybe we are not living in a simulation, but we have a physical world, but we have, and if you go down again to the
Okay.
elemental particles and quarks and so on, we have so much space between, let's say, a proton and an electron, and so we have many worlds which are stacked together,
Within each
which
other. Okay.
yes, which are really around us. And I, for myself, have also seen someone which, yeah, self-murdered 3 days ago. And he was really, but he was a scientist. I was working with him. And then he stood in.
Suicided himself.
Yes,
He
the
killed
suicide. Yes, and he stood in my basement.
room. Oh, really?
Yes,
Came to see
yeah,
you.
and I've seen
Oh
like
my
you.
God.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
3D.
really. And
Wow.
then I said, oh, I don't say the name, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I now say Daniel. But
Yeah.
Daniel, how can you be there? You are not living.
Yeah.
And in this moment where my emotion comes, then he vanished in a dust, in a
Wow.
cloud of dust. He was
Wow.
but it was really so
Yeah.
overwhelming,
Yes.
and
Clear.
so,
Yeah.
and many, many people have such,
Yeah.
let's say, encounters. So,
I mean, so there is, I mean, I've had an encounter where um an entity, a blue ball came, and both my husband and I saw it in the middle of the night around bedroom where we were
mm,
sleeping. And so obviously something is able to create coherence, whether it is coherence in biology,
mm,
coherence in energy, something else is creating coherence that is non-physical. I mean, the panpsychics, they say, intelligence grew out of the body, out of
mm,
the form into
mm,
self-organization. But you are saying, if I catch you correctly, you're saying
mm.
beyond that is a field of intelligence that is the one that's
Yes.
coordinating this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have such a we possibly don't have seen this in meditation or in my dreams, but you have stacked levels of realities, and yes, and like in a matryoshka around all things, like the, let's say, aura, which is around the human body, and so on.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes you can see even such emanation, yeah,
Emanations. I
emanation or evanescent
absolutely. Yes.
auric elements, yes,
I
from people.
remember, yeah, I remember my philosophy teacher was teaching and he went into Heidegger explanation. I
Mm.
would say Heidegger explained something form of Buddhism, but anyways, and he was golden. And I like stared at him. We were all floating in another idea world with him. But let me ask you, what's the summary of your book? The
Mm.
consciousness, AI, I know, versus the brain. I mean, computer AI versus the brain, consciousness in all that. What's the summary of your book? And could you hold it up one more time?
Yeah, yeah. This
Okay.
is beneath
Computer and
there. You
AI
can
versus
read
the
it
human
now.
brain.
Yes, yes, yeah. There's
Yes.
something in the
Yeah.
mirror.
Beautiful. It's
But
gorgeous.
in this book, I really go more into biology, and I explained how harmoniously, which I said, matter evolved to consciousness, and minimal units of consciousness gathered together to form a kind of brain, more and more in the evolution. And this is a, let's say, natural and, yeah, harmonious action. And the computers, as good as they function today, they are put together from different pieces, and the brain has, on the other side, has a flow
Feels,
which
yes.
comes sometimes from somewhere, I would say from a higher sphere. And
Mm.
these are these ideas, or some are really gifted with some properties and so on. And this comes from outside. This cannot be directly in the brain. And you have sometimes accidents where people are really good in arithmetic and geometry, which were not before they had their
Suddenly.
brain
Yes,
injury. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
And where comes this? Where comes this? These, let's say, uh, scarves and problems in the brain cannot explain this perfect, let's say,
in
arithmetic
sudden transmission.
capabilities.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even people who have had water brains, they are not thinking in their brain. They must be thinking
Yeah.
somewhere else, right? The
Yeah,
professors
yeah,
in,
I have seen these MRI and X-ray
yep,
pictures, but they have a very thin cortex,
yep,
very thin cortex. But yeah,
still,
they are functioning and have
nevertheless.
a standard EQ, IQ. Yes.
My God.
Okay.
So I would say we can wrap this up with the understanding that definitely in your research, and I love that you are doctor, professor, still senior professor at
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
University of
yeah,
Dresden,
yeah.
that you are versed not only in the biology, but into that which is beyond, and you're open-minded to help us and the viewers to gain some sort of trust in the fact that if a scientific person like you and like your colleagues are thinking in those realms, and like Weizsäcker and all the other Nobel Prize winners, we are indeed more than our brain, and we cannot, like you said, let ourselves be confused through the Turing test that proves us that we can be confused. People are being confused. Is this now saying it loves me because it says it loves me? Does it love me? This machine that says, I love you? Because it says it in a nice voice on top of all that, you know?
Yeah. But there is not this depth behind, which goes down into the base of the matter and into back into all dimensions. And the other thing is, we are open in other dimensions
Exactly.
till the universe.
And
This
can
is
feel each other a long time across time and space,
yes,
and interact across time and space, and even have effect at a
yeah,
distance. I mean, my husband and I, we work in radionics, and
yeah,
Einstein didn't want to believe in spooky action at a distance.
yeah.
But, you know, here we are 100 years later, and we can create. In China, they can, with our instruments,
Yes,
can grow corn and mice without fertilizers better than the neighbor who does use
yeah,
chemicals, just with
yeah,
sending the intention, the
yeah,
informational field, the scalar component
yes,
of inner. Yeah.
yeah.
You
Okay.
know, how can people follow up with you? I will put the link below. I am so grateful to your time. I am so
Yes.
grateful to your
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really grateful too. Thank you. And yeah,
Thank you. And yeah, one last word. What would you encourage the viewers to do with their lives? Since they are different
yes.
than a computer, what is this about, this life?
Yeah, you, as a human being, you are a mediator between all such dimension, from the universe down to the, let's say, elementary particles. You are a mediator, and you can act, and that's what human beings should do. Do something good
Good.
for the other people.
That is it in a nutshell. Be effective and create positive change. Thank you
Yes,
for your positive change right
thank
now.
you.
I could just hug you. Thank you. A big hug to Germany from Bali here. Until next time. Thank
Now
you. Thank
I'm
you.
speaking from Spain now.
Oh, you are in
Yeah.
Spain. That's right. Oh my God, you
Okay,
get
no
around.
problem. But it was my holiday.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you.